Yeah. Much better vision right now, too.
Awesome. Well, we might as well hop in and get started. There might be some folks joining us as we continue on, but that's okay. So to start us off, my name is Mackenzie McLaughlin. I work with NAU Communications, and I am presenting this with...
Hi, I'm Maria Deckeluder with NAU Social Media.
And we're super excited that you all are joining us today for this presentation on accessibility in social media, something that is truly important because as we get into, social media should be for everyone.
So to start off, since this is about social media and accessibility, we're going to start off by talking about social media. So what is the purpose of social media? It's to be social, to connect and engage with others. There's so many platforms out there right now that allow you to do this. And in doing so, meet your audience where they are. And so when it comes to accessibility, the same principles should apply. You should always strive to connect in an inclusive way, or you miss out on connecting with your full potential audience. As we can see here, 1 billion people experience some form of disability, and this increases when accounting for temporary and situational disabilities. And so what happens when people like those come to social or websites that, don't include them or speak to them in their way? They just leave. So you're missing out on them, you're missing those connections. So what does accessibility mean? On social media, it means recognizing exclusions that currently exist, learning from your followers, taking their input in, and present information out there in the clearest possible way.
So to start off, we wanted to show you this example post of what a tweet would actually sound like if it was read by a screen reader. So let's...
Text, U, mathematical sans serif italic small t, mathematical sans serif italic small h, mathematical sans serif italic small 1, mathematical sans serif italic small n, mathematical sans serif italic small k, it's, mathematical script small c, mathematical script small u, mathematical script small t, e2, mathematical sans serif bold small d, mathematical sans serif bold small r, mathematical sans serif bold small 1, mathematical sans serif bold small t, mathematical sans serif bold small a.
So that goes on for another minute. As we can tell, it is unintelligible, right? That tells us absolutely nothing. So something to keep in mind, and we'll get into what we can do better as we go on. So our first and favorite, my favorite, Maria's favorite too, maybe, we'll talk about emojis.
Okay, so my question for the group is, how many of you have ever posted just using emojis? I'm guilty of that, and I do it a lot. So why? Because it's easy. Emojis convey that emotion, and when you can't think of words, sometimes the perfect string of emojis not only works, but it gives your brain a break too. But as you'll see, what we think of as a simple post of emojis is in fact the opposite for those with assistive technology. So my favorite example to do is you're on vacation, no priorities, no deadlines. You're just posting for you, not anyone else, not for work. So you're on vacation, having a drink, you want to capture the moment. And this is what you post to go along with your vacation vibes. So this is what other people see, but this is what you hear. Palm tree, smiling face with sunglasses, tropical drink, woman dancing, medium light skin tone, party popper. So for those who can see it visually, it makes sense. But then when you take out the context and it's just the speech reader, again, like the other previous example, unintelligible. Another trend we see a lot that's even built into messaging apps is the combining characters into figures. So this one, the visual shruggy, will be read aloud as macron / underline katakana _ macron. I probably also pronounced some of those wrong, but again, it's unintelligible and likely would cause that follower to leave your environment and maybe even unfollow you. So what you can do to keep your emojis accessible, use them sparingly. When you think about creating your posts, make them part of your post, but not the star of your post. And it's put the information first, and then, you know, you can throw in the emojis at the end where everything that you wanted to say is already out there. And it's also good practice to avoid using emojis in your profile name. Again, on my personal thing, I am guilty of this. You know, I have lots of those. And then also resist changing the color on customizable emojis. Every unique icon gets a descriptor info, and that includes skin tones. So as our first example showed, it will be a long mathematical explanation that people will just tune out and leave.
And it's important too, when you're using emojis, sometimes we think it's cute to replace a word with an emoji, and that can really lack context for folks and then also lose the message. So that's why putting them at the end is generally better. So let's talk about how we write accessibly for social media. The important pieces of this sort of come down to thinking about context and how descriptive you can be. So if you're using a hyperlink, it's important to add content indicators. So this is essentially just telling folks what it is they're going to click on. So if they're going to click on it and it takes them to a podcast, you can, you know, put in barracks audio. If it's going to take them to a video, you can put video. If it's to a picture, you can do picture. You'll see a lot of news sources these days are doing a lot more work on this, but it's just a great habit to get into, because then it prepares your user for what to expect. And sometimes that means that they choose to not go to that site, or they continue to because they're prepared for it. You also want to think about using URL shorteners, and bit.ly does have a free version. It's really helpful instead of posting a long hyperlink string, because again, that gets read out loud by assistive technologies, and keeping it shorter and at the end is more accessible for your users. It's also important to place hashtags at the end. Again, similar to emojis, you don't want to start replacing words with hashtags because again, it disrupts the flow and the message that's going on. So this is a perfect segue into hashtags. How many of us feel like we really get hashtags? Like, you understand them? All right, I'm seeing some iffies. Hashtags really are meant to connect your content to a greater, larger conversation, right? So if we're saying like hashtag my NAU view, we hope that when we go search that hashtag, students across campus are posting really beautiful pictures or anecdotes about their time at NAU, right? So the important pieces of that is to remember that it's a tag, right? It is putting it into somewhere else, and it's not meant to necessarily be some cutesy new way to deliver information. So just like in other text to speech programs, they read them word for word using the spaces and capital letters to differentiate and separate between terms. So when you're using hashtags, it's important to use what's called camel casing. So that's where you capitalize each word of the hashtag. So the difference of hashtag perks of being a lumberjack versus perks of being a lumberjack, right? Because then that all gets put into one word. The same thing, like you can see on this Twitter example, is that the Black Lives Matter is usually how it ends up getting read versus Black Lives Matter. So there's a difference there because of the lack of camel casing.
Next up, alt text and flyers. So if you want to expand your reach and be more inclusive, you can start using alt captions if you're not doing so already. These allow those using a screen reader to hear the visual descriptions. But a good note is a lot of the social media platforms have it available, but it's not always the default setting. So a lot of times you'll have to go in to the settings or the advanced settings and turn them on. So our first platform is Twitter. For Twitter, you'll have to go in and, again, go to the settings, go to accessibility, and turn on compose image. And then if you're going to create a tweet and you pull up a picture from your camera roll or on the computer, you will see at the bottom, it has a capital ALT. And so you'll click on that, and then you'll add your alt text describing what you're tweeting out. Instagram, it's more hidden, I would say, because you don't get there till the very end. And a lot of times it's easy to forget that you have to do it, because you write your caption, you'll go to post, but then there isn't an alt text button right there with everything else. For Instagram, you'll have to go to the advanced settings and then write your alt text and then be able to describe it. Facebook, I would say, is the most inclusive in terms of it has things already there. It will add machine generated descriptive text to photos, and it also does that with any videos you upload as well. But again, they aren't always the most descriptive, and they might not always be the most accurate. So it's always a good idea to go back in and see what it has and change it to make it clearer for your audience. So in terms of writing alt text, kind of like what Mackenzie was saying, the more descriptive, the better. We always recommend err on the side of more rather than less. As you'll see here in the example, it's a little small, but the alt text reads, Latifa sits in her wheelchair and smiles. She's placed on a red background with outlines that are yellow around her chair. So the alt text doesn't just describe the image itself, but the entire graphic. It includes the color and then the little design, squiggly yellow and blue elements. Our next example is Louis. When you're looking at these, you want to make sure it applies to the context that it's being promoted on. So let's say we have this picture of Louis and it's on the NAU Athletics website. And alt text for that might be Louis T. Lumberjack, because that's what Louis is known, that's his formal name. But if the same picture was on, say, a web page that had the mascots of the entire Big Sky, we want to get it even more descriptive. So Louis T. Lumberjack of Northern Arizona University, to make sure that they know that this is his name and what college he's affiliated with. And another thing, let's say this was found in Klein Library. They're doing, Louis over the years. To distinguish it from all the other Louis, it's a good idea to, include the context and the date. So this would be Louis Lumberjack at a football game in 2018. So another favorite topic of ours, if anyone has come to NAU Social Office Hours, we talk a lot about flyers and them going in the feed or as main posts. And we'd like to reiterate our stance that when, if possible, always try to not post your flyers as the main thing. Why? There's so much information on the flyers. If you're thinking about accessibility and alt text, it would be so complicated to probably not even enough space to write out everything that is in the graphic. It's complicating, it's overwhelming, not just to you putting it in, but the people that your audience. What you should do instead, have, again, all the main elements, the important elements as text in your caption. You can have a visual and then link it to the NAU events website or a Facebook event where people can go for more information. So keep things simple and link out.
So talking about captioning, this is also becoming I'm quite impressed. I've been perusing TikTok quite a bit, and these Gen Zers are all over the caption train these days. And a lot of them are doing it themselves, which is important. But we're going to talk about different tools that you can use for captioning. But anytime that you post a video, it's important that you find ways to close caption. So for YouTube, it is super simple. YouTube has its own closed captioning system going on. You can upload text right to it, and then it'll time it out for you. I taught myself how to do it, and now I feel like a pro, even though it's a very basic skill that I learned, but it's pretty easy. Facebook also has captioning opportunities where you can upload, like, let's say you recorded yourself and you're reading from a script, and then you wanted to upload that as your closed caption. You can do that on Facebook as well. You can also use the post description area to add text to caption video posts, like on Instagram. So you can put more information there. LinkedIn also allows you to have closed captioning if you utilize it from the desktop. But when you're using captions, like to make your video look cute, like when they're not closed captions, but you're captioning as part of the visual overall, you want to make sure that you're using sizes that are large enough that can be read, that you have good contrast between the backgrounds. So if you're using Snapchat or Instagram story, you want to make sure that those are the way you're creating those. Don't make it more difficult for people around you. And then if you want to turn your Snapchat story, like let's say you've done a whole long, takeover on Instagram or on Snapchat, and you want to turn that into like a standalone video that can be shared, the best thing to do is to upload that to YouTube and then caption it from there, because Instagram and Snapchat don't have captioning functionality within the app. And then also make sure that you've got that Twitter alt text turned on. That will be helpful there. And then some of the captioning tools that we wanted to recommend are Clip-O-Matic and Subtitles, and those will automate your subtitles on social media videos. And those, I think they do cost like a couple of dollars, but they save you a lot of time in the long run because it takes a lot of the work from you. And I think it's just like a one-time, $4 app that you purchase. So that can be really helpful to keep you from doing, a lot of the captioning on your own, but can really streamline that process. I want to pause really quick because we have a lot of questions about flyers, it looks like, in the chat. So, so you can't really upload a PDF to Facebook. It doesn't work. Like, you can only do JPEGs or PNGs, and that is sort of the bummer because then it just removes all alt text. So if you've created your flyer in InDesign that has the ability to be screen read as a PDF, once it goes onto social media, that is lost, which is part of the reason why it's recommended not to post that, because all of that metadata is sort of just gone to the wind of social media. So it's not just you that can't figure out how to upload PDFs. It's just because the networks don't allow you to do that. Let's see, I wanted to make sure we had also, Grace, your question about the alt text setting, that you've seen a lot of accounts are using alt text in the description field of the posts. Personally, I don't know if there are functionality differences, but I do think it's a visibility thing. So I think it's important for folks to start demonstrating that alt text is important. And so putting it in the caption moves it front and center so other people start to get along with that idea as well. And so I think it's more of like an ally demonstration versus a functionality demonstration. I might be mistaken. So if anybody knows differently, let me know. But that is my assumption there.
Yes, and I'd jump in what Mackenzie was saying too. A lot of times people, rather than putting their hashtags as a comment below their post, they'll put the alt text just so it's even more prominent than it would ordinarily be. And going back to the flyer question, we're not saying not to post your flyers at all, but let's say you created a Facebook event, all the details are there. So an event allows you to upload other documents. So in that case, you could turn the PDF into a JPEG and post the flyer there as well. So that way you're meeting both of your audiences.
Yep, because the details can be read from the Facebook event on a screen reader, but your users who just want to look at the flyer can see the flyer there as well. And then the question about, does the reader pause between sentences or paragraphs? I don't think you need special characters. I think as long as your text is written in good English, it will mimic English speaking. I'm not sure how to explain that, but it recognizes periods, commas. It recognizes paragraph indentations, all that good stuff. So I don't think you need anything specific. Now, that's another cutesy trend on social media. You know, you put like the 3 dots and then, you know, there's more to the caption later. That would read kind of funky on a screen reader. So it's important to think about that. Yeah, write as you normally would. It uses pronunciation to read correctly. Exactly. But, you know, on social media, all the cool kids don't use punctuation correctly. So what are we going to do? That's when we want to be more mindful and write as you normally would. So talking about fonts.
Going on Mackenzie's trend about what all the cool kids want to do. Again, we focus on Instagram because that's where a lot of people are right now. On Instagram, everyone is just looking for a way to stand out from everyone else. So a lot of people that you'll see, and a lot of influencers, they'll go to the special websites and have custom font to put on theirs to be, so it'll, you know, give them the extra thing that makes people stop in their feed to see like, oh, what is this? But custom font is the worst thing you could do for accessibility, because text-to-speech programs, they skip over the characters without even attempting to read them. The original first tweet that we shared was an example of a custom font, the cursive script. And so anytime you're looking at fonts, the best idea is to stick to ones that are native to the platform and avoid customizing anything that wouldn't be able to be read. And in terms of like stories and other social media as well, making sure that the font you have in there is readable. So, you know, it's not too tiny and hidden away. It's large enough to read.
And another important piece to the conversation about accessibility comes to inclusive language as well. So when you're writing for social media, you want to make sure that you are writing in an inclusive voice. So you want to create this culture of community. That's what social media is all about, right? It's to engage and to socialize and to sort of feel like a part of something bigger, right? If we're using social media to its greatest power, that is what we are trying to do. So when you are writing posts, it's great to use terms like we or our or us to make people feel like they are included. And luckily at NAU, we kind of come with this predetermined word that is inclusive, and that's a lumberjack, you know? So lumberjacks come from all walks of life and corners of the earth. And as such, you know, they are a special group that can be addressed in that way. And I think that's something really beautiful that can go a long way in sort of creating a culture of community on your social media, which is hopefully what we're all trying to do with our various social channels, is to create that sense of belonging. And sometimes we might not even recognize that the language we use in our captions can be exclusive. So if we just put some intentionality in that inclusiveness of the language, we can really make sure that we're continuing that goal of building community. Which leads us to the social media and accessibility tools that we want to make sure that we leave you with, because it's hard, right? A lot of us who are doing social media on this call are probably, it is not your full-time job, right? This is just something in addition to your normal tasks and the things that you're doing. And that can make it extra hard. And then, you know, when there's all these other elements to think about, it can become really overwhelming and stressful. But there's a lot of different tools available for all of us here that can sort of minimize the work that we have to put into it in the front, but increase efficiency and inclusivity, which is ultimately the goal here. So we will start talking about those right now.
So as Mackenzie said, this is a lot, you know, it's hard to process. It's hard to know how your actions come across with the accessibility. Luckily, there's these tools we've listed up here that you can go and, like, you know, put in your things and it'll check it for you and assess the readability of your copy, your website, and things like that. So when in doubt, I would say, you know, give all these a try and see if what you've been doing lines up with the accessibility standards.
And I recommend like take a screenshot of this or save it to have in your back pocket, so that you can return back to this and check out these handy tools. The one that I learned about when we were prepping for this presentation that I thought was really cool is on Twitter. You can like tweet at image alt text, or get alt text in reply to a tweet, and then or that has an image, and like these little Twitter robots, the good kind, will, if they're available, will create alt text for you on your behalf. And I just think that's like a neat, like kind of cool tech thing that I haven't really heard of before. So I'm intrigued to use that.
And again, you know, this is a lot of information. So if you're wondering what you can do going forward, I would just say, you know, choose one thing that you want to improve upon and start there. Because, you know, my full job is social media, but even us, like, we are not where we could be in terms of making everything inclusive, just because there's so many platforms, lack of time, and it is hard. Part of our strategy for our social media is letting our students, you know, represent us, do the talking. And so we do a lot of takeovers. And so trying to get students on board with even like adding text to what the videos they post, that's always a struggle. And so we are looking for ways to try and make it easier for them, but then to get more in compliance with what we are hoping to put out.
And the important part of this is that, you know, we're all learning together, right? And we're all trying to take these steps to sort of create this more inclusive social media realm that we can. And so conversations like this are important to have for not us, because, you know, we can't claim to be the experts necessarily, because, you know, like Maria said, every platform is different and they're always changing, and it can be really hard to keep on top of. But as long as we are all here having these conversations and holding each other accountable, we can make sure that we build on that intentionality and build a more inclusive social media strategy overall. So with that, we sort of just have questions, and it seems like we had a lot of questions in the beginning. So hopefully we can have some good conversation here. Things maybe you've seen on social media, times that maybe you've noticed things haven't been accessible, because, you know, we learn from mistakes sometimes. Like, have you noticed things that happen that might not be, you know, the most inclusive, or something you'd like to share, experiences perhaps? Yeah, Mackenzie.
Should we consider going back through our social medias and adding accessibility to them if we can? Like, if Instagram allows you to edit posts.
I think if you had the opportunity and the time to do that, it would be really meaningful for your audience that benefits from it. I think that could be really cool. And I think it could be, you know, now my like social media brain is churning, but that could be a post in and of itself. It's, you know, saying like, hey, guess what? We've just gone back and reviewed our social media and we've added all this alt text. Like, go review our old posts, or go, you know, do this, and sort of like make a celebration out of that, out of the new experience of adding that. Good question. Let's see. GIFs are not that accessible. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Rachel. Thanks for sharing that. GIFs are hard. And, you know, what's really hard about GIFs too is that they also almost don't always make sense in general. And so it can be really hard to even figure out. And I haven't played much on like Giphy or Tenor or the GIF places. Like, I wonder if there are alt text options there.
They do. They've updated their things since then. And so, yes, they do have alt text, and then also different third-party platforms too. So one of the things we use to schedule our posts is Buffer. And so we do use a lot of GIFs in ours, and you can add your alt text just as you can if you're uploading a video or a picture.
Good questions. Maria and I haven't done a presentation like this before, so we, are working through this and figuring, learning as we go and trying to do our best practices. So, if we end a little early, it's everybody can have a little bit of time left in the afternoon, but we definitely want to make sure everybody feels like they're getting their questions answered and maybe, spitballing ideas and having a good conversation. So, let's see, Calvin. Actually, it is pretty, I would say yes. If you can add content indicators on websites, I also think that's helpful. Anytime there's a hyperlink, it's just I like to think of it as like a courtesy. Like, where is this link taking me? Is it taking me to a Russian troll farm, or is it, you know what I mean? It like gives people a sense of what to expect. Mackenzie, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know I am doing an ethnography for my disability studies class. So I've been taking notes and I will be including you guys in that research I'm doing.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. Thank you. That sounds great.
And then back to the question about video and websites. Another great thing we talked about, like YouTube and Facebook having captions already there. It's always a great idea to, embed that post. So then that way everything's there.
Does anybody have any tips or tricks that they might want to share when they're doing social media that they have to keep themselves working towards accessibility with their copy and their language and alt text and all that good stuff? Any good experiences?
Hey, this is Sarah. One of the things that I've tried to do specific to, like, if there's instructions on things, it's not necessarily social media, but I think there's an application there, is giving context for the thing on the screen. If it's a button or a field you have to fill out, is it the top of the page, the bottom of the page, so that put a little context to it. And I think specifically in the IT world that helps us out a little bit, but I think there's context for that.
Awesome. And Sarah, will I noticed earlier you mentioned something about Microsoft Teams. Does that have captioning live streamed, or?
It does. I actually tried it out at a meeting last Friday, and it was pretty decent. It just, you just turn it on. It's in preview mode. Okay. I think because of our current Teams setup, we can get some stuff early, and it just appeared at the bottom, and it had the person's name first, and it wasn't 100%, but it's pretty good. Okay. And then if you upload a video to Stream, which is part of our Office 365 ecosystem, I guess you could call it. Stream is kind of like our YouTube or Kaltura kind of video streaming service. And when you upload a video there, if you have to do a couple of things, like select the language as English, and then you can turn on the auto transcription. And it's pretty powerful because once that's in there, you can search for a key term, and then it'll jump you directly to that spot in the video, which is pretty helpful. So, in the context of if a lecture is being recorded, that a student was like, oh, my dog was freaking out and I knew they were talking about iron or, I don't know, that's the first word that came to mind. You can type that into the transcription, it'll jump right to it. And that's an automatic thing too. So, and it doesn't have to be things that were recorded in Teams. You can upload anything to Stream too.
Oh, that's good to know too. So Calvin, I don't know if that live streaming on Facebook or Instagram, I don't think has captions. Maria, no?
Yes, they do not have captions yet. When we did our, Mackenzie, what was the Facebook series we did over summer?
Forecast from Flagstaff.
Forecast from Flagstaff. When we did Forecast from Flagstaff, those were live shows, and NAU TV had to hire outside. So someone was on the East Coast, and they were doing the captions as it was going live. So normally, I would say a lot of people don't have those resources, but if you were to do a live, you could always go back and after put those captions in, and then free share.
And you could let your audience know when you're live streaming that you will go back and add captions. Sean, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the captions that are built in with Teams, and Zoom will have that option at some point. We're working on getting that in at NAU right now, but they're not an accommodation. At that point, they're a service to help the general public. There is a difference between having that and having a captioner on hand. And that is also a possibility when we do events here at NAU. You can turn in that request through disability resources, and we can have someone in there to caption when you're having an event. And that way it is the actual captions, because you have to meet a certain percentage to be considered using it as accommodation.
Perfect. That's super helpful to know. Thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm for everyone,